Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about Saw vs. Hostel. And I'm a huge Saw fan. I love the franchise. It is one of my favorites apart from Scream and A Nightmare on Elm, which probably isn't surprising since I did do my Spiral review. However, it kind of is still surprising to people that I'm a Saw fan since I don't like torture. I usually shut off movies that have torture in them, or I fast forward through the torture scenes unless I can't, and then I just shut it off. And if I can't, it's because it's important to the movie or whatever. It depends on what the torture is too. So part of why I like Saw is because of the mystery involved. You know the ringleader from the first film, but you don't really know if he has accomplices or why the people were chosen and placed in these hellish traps. In the second one, the end of it, and yes, there's going to be spoilers, so I do apologize if you've never seen any of these. So if you plan on watching these, don't watch this video. If you are curious what somebody who hates torture thinks about this, and I ruin it, I don't think you'll care. Because you may not even still go watch it. But I don't want to ruin things for people that actually do want to watch this. But at the end of the second one, you know that he does have one accomplice at least, but you don't know if he's got others. And the people John picks is based on people that he feels are taking life for granted. They have little compassion for those around them or themselves. For example, Dr. Gordon, he's a workaholic and he treated his patients without care. He didn't give a fuck about his patients. And he doesn't care about his family. He neglects his wife. He neglects his child. He just doesn't care about anybody. He only cares about himself. And he even goes to the extent of almost having an affair, or trying to have an affair. Keeping patients at a distance, I can understand, especially if you're an oncologist. You're dealing with telling people you're going to die all the time. And I believe that's what Dr. Gordon was. He was an oncologist. And the reason why I understand it is because my oncologist keeps me at a distance and all of her patients, and I think it's so she doesn't get attached to them. Because cancer takes so many lives, so it's bound to take some of your patients, and I can't imagine what that's like. I would feel like a failure if I was a doctor, and that's why I'm not a doctor, because I wouldn't be able to handle it. So I can understand keeping them at a distance, but Dr. Gordon's behavior towards his patients just was unacceptable. And when Zeb calls him out and says, you know, the patient you're talking about has a name, his name is John, he looks down on Zeb like he's weak or something. So I kind of understand why Jigsaw picked him. And Adam ruins people's lives with his photos. And he's a PI that basically stalks his target and takes photos of them for money and sends them to whoever hired him. Amanda, when Jigsaw first finds her, was an addict, and after he put her through the bear trap, reverse bear trap I should say, she started cutting, and he believes that she still doesn't have an appreciation for life, so he puts her back through another test, and he keeps testing her because she's not having the reaction he wants. And it's like, well, maybe she's cutting because you put her through all that trauma. You ever think of that? But you know, Jigsaw wasn't exactly sane. Anyways, moving on. So in the second film, all the people that are trapped in the house are ex-cons who did terrible things, or we perceive that they all did terrible things. We don't really know. We just know that they were all framed by the detective except for the kid. And we don't know if they just spent time in jail for the framed crime or if they actually committed other crimes and that was just an added throw in jail thing or whatever. If it was just like an additional charge that they didn't actually commit, but they committed all these other crimes. We don't know. Anyways, so from there we go to 3 and 4, which is about a couple who lost their child and are having trouble letting go. All the while they're neglecting their other child and each other. I mean, the mother's having an affair, the father's losing it. It's also where we learn John knows his accomplices are making traps that their victims cannot escape from and confronts Amanda about it, saying that we're not here to murder people. And Amanda says, you murder people all the time. And at first when I saw that, I said, well, that's not technically true because he makes his traps where people can actually get out of. They don't. But when I was watching the first Saw movie, before Amanda becomes his accomplice, I noticed that that's not true. John actually did make traps where his victims could not get out of. The razor wire trap, the guy has to make his way from one end of the room to the other, but in the middle of all that is razor wire. There's no way he would have survived. There's just no way. And the safe in the middle of the room with the numbers all over the walls and floor, there's no way he would have figured out the combination. I mean, how would he remember every single combination he tried using those numbers? It would take him hours, if not longer, to figure it out. And him holding a candle with flammable substance on him, it's not surprising that he died. And even the one with Amanda, she escaped at the expense of the other victim in the room. The key to her freedom was in the body of the victim in the room with her. So John basically is judge, jury, and executioner. He determines who lives and dies based on the trap he creates for them. And that's why I thought it was kind of funny that he doesn't think he's a murderer, but even if people died while trying to escape his messed up traps, it's still murder. Hostel, on the other hand, was extremely hard to watch. That's not to say the traps in Saw were an easy watch. For instance, the pendulum trap of Saw 5, I actually shut it off the first time I saw that. I didn't actually watch Saw 5 for a very, very long time. The second time I watched it, I skipped it. And I can watch that scene now, kind of. The beginning of Saw 2 with the key in the eye socket, that freaked me out. I can't watch that scene still. I still look away. And the rack in Saw 3, the razor box of Saw 2, the razor box of Saw 2 still freaks me out because she's has her hand stuck up in this box and these blades are holding her arms in place so she can't get them out without causing some serious damage, and it freaks me out. I can watch it, but it freaks me out. Same with the rack. The rack I can kind of watch. Still kind of freaks me out though. And the finger trap of Spiral, that one is, I think, the worst one for me. I had a serious hard time watching that. I wanted to skip it. I think I did skip it. So those are like the hardest ones for me to watch. And with Hostel, you can't really fast forward or skip the torture scenes because you'll miss things. And the film has a really thin plot line. Like, it's about backpackers traveling through Europe and find a hostel or hotel in Slovakia. It follows the cliche that sex, drugs, and alcohol will lead to your demise. The three are drugged and tortured for money. If I remember correctly, anyways, I think they were tortured for money. I think people were bidding on what happened to the victims or something like that, because I remember there was a piece of paper or a sheet of paper that showed large amounts of money next to different nationalities. Americans were the highest on the list, I believe. I just couldn't stomach watching what happened to the victims in the film, and it didn't have a good story to make me want to watch it. And it seemed to focus on torture for the sake of torture. Saw at least has a story and doesn't focus on the torture aspects. A lot of times it just shows glimpses of them. And the important factor is the mystery. Yes, sometimes they do show extended lengths of the torture scenes, but it's because it fits with the story. Like in the second one, when the girl has her hand stuck up in the box, the razor box, and she's got her hands clamped with these blades and she can't get her hands out, you want to see if she can get out. So of course they're gonna show that a little bit and see if she can actually get the antidote to the poison that is in her system. And you kind of return to her when one of the other inmates, or whatever you want to call them, is trying to find the numbers on the back of everybody's neck so he can try to open the safe, because supposedly I think there's a antidote in there. The other one is the rack, and you kind of watch him go through it, which really was difficult to watch. But it's this guy is going through these series of traps where all these people that had to do with the death of his child are in these traps, and he can either save them or watch them die. So you're going to watch them suffer until he decides what he wants to do. And you want to scream at him and say, would you just fucking save the person? But and other times you want to say, you know what, they deserve it. But so it's more understandable why they show those. And you, part of the traps too and all of it, the story is really focused on the mystery, like what is going on, who is behind this, why were these people targeted, will the victim survive this, are they able to survive the trap? So I just don't think Saw is in the same category as Hostel, and I kind of find it frustrating when people say that they're the same. And I've always been called a freak or sick for liking Saw, so that could also be why I get a little pissy. I honestly found the imagery of Hostel a lot more demented and far more graphic. And I think that's because Saw, a lot of the stuff that's in it looks so fake. I hate to say that, but it really does. And I also like the message of Saw, kind of. Many people do take life for granted. We don't live long lives, but we spend most of it sleeping, working, or in school. We don't spend it enjoying life. Many people spend life trying to just survive, living paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford things that other people can afford. They're just trying to struggle to pay the bills, leaving little else for fun or a way to relieve stress from their everyday life. And what I mean by that is a lot of people can't afford to go on vacations. They can't afford to go to Disney. They can't afford to go to Six Flags or a cruise or go to another country or take their kids to all these different things, or even buy their kids things that will help their kid relieve stress, because kids are so stressed out today because of how much homework they have. I know, because I was one of those kids, and I've heard kids. I worked in a facility and I worked with a lot of low-income, middle-class children, and they were all very stressed out from the amount of homework they had. I was shocked at how much homework they had. and how stressed out they were that they couldn't understand the assignments. And we were trying to help them with their homework, and I didn't even understand the word problems. They were so confusing. I felt so bad for these kids. And these kids, their parents couldn't afford to buy them things to help them relieve some of the stress or allow them in some of these after-school programs because they couldn't afford it. So it's understandable why we take life for granted. A lot of people take life for granted because what else can we do? There's no other option for many people. And I find that kind of depressing. And I think that's why Jigsaw kind of frustrates me too, because he believes that these people are taking life for granted, so they deserve what they get. But what else is there for some of these people? What do you think about Hostel and Saw? Do you think Saw is torture porn, as they say? Do you think it's in line with Hostel? Do you think Saw is more graphic in the torture aspects than Hostel? And what do you think about Jigsaw's message that people take life for granted? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It'd be much appreciated. If you don't want to miss a video, click the bell icon to stay up to date. I don't know exactly what I'm planning for my next videos. I will let you know on Twitter. So stay tuned. Thank you again so much. Take care until next time.